Hello, I'm back. How is everyone doing? I hope great. I've been digging into the Senior Bowl heavy. As I mentioned, I had to take a personal day yesterday, but I am recording this on Thursday and want to continue our deep dive into the Steelers offense. And again, I mean, these are very numbers driven, but worse than you thought. I mean, when it was all said and done, 17 games of the regular season. If you didn't listen to the one 2 days ago, I urge you to, and it's a little disheartening to say the least. So let's dig right in here. And I got all these bullet points, all of them numbers driven, but I will give you commentary as well, of course. And we're going to start with Russell Wilson. Didn't throw for over 217 yards in his past 4 regular season games. And over his final 5 regular season games, he completed 61% of his passes for 5.7 yards per attempt. That's 25th in terms of completion percentage. I mean, it's only 5 games, but we know it was bad. But the only quarterback with fewer yards per attempt over that stretch was Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And Wilson was under 7 in all 5 of those games. Pretty bad. Okay, we know about him throwing between the numbers. Second lowest percentage of qualified quarterbacks, only 49% between the numbers. On throws outside the numbers, though, he averaged 7.7 yards per attempt, which is 12th best. Pretty good. I mean, he is a good outside the deep ball thrower. There's no question about that. This, I don't know if this is how he's been taught, but I definitely think it was something that was very prevalent with the Broncos. But Wilson threw the ball away, what they just deemed a throwaway, on 7.2% of his dropbacks. And only the Bears had more throwaways than the Steelers for the season, 41 versus 38. Now, this is a bigger conversation. If they weren't taking sacks and he's throwing the ball away to avoid negative plays, okay. But they took a fair amount of sacks, including Wilson. And I understand sometimes guys just aren't open. This could be a receiver stat as well. Okay. Yeah, you gotta throw it away at times, but to lead the league and then follow up on this is what they would call a check down pass. 13.4% of the Steelers' pass attempts were considered check down passes, the highest rate in the league. You don't love that. I mean, that's better than a throwaway. I mean, you dump it to a back. That doesn't mean it ends up being a negative play or that's 100% a negative stat. But we know Wilson's recent history is either a bomb or a check down. There's not a lot of intermediate stuff. And this league is really not predicated, but the big time passing games are great in the intermediate levels. And the Steelers definitely are not. Their average time to throw as a team was 2.91 seconds. That's 6th highest in the league. Play action. This was higher earlier in the year, and it's dwindled down to 25.2% for the season. That's 10th highest. Okay. I mean, it's a lot better than it was with other coordinators and other quarterbacks, obviously. It's still like that to be higher, especially considering how much the Steelers run the football. The Steelers threw a, quote, deep ball on 12.8% of their pass attempts. Only 6 teams threw a higher deep ball percentage. So again, that kind of adds up, but intermediate passing is lacking. And they're a good deep ball team. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. BetOnline today to get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, speaking of deep balls, Pickens is more than that, but we know he's basically an elite deep ball player. And I don't know what his future is here. I'm starting to get rumbles that they're really unhappy with him. And I get it, but boy, he's a good player. But this is the importance that he brings. The average depth of target when he was on the field for the whole team was 7.1 yards. When he's not on the field, the average depth of target was 6.0. Now, a yard and a tenth doesn't seem like a ton, but it's a ton. It's a ton. Over the course of a year, he did have 13 receptions of 30-plus yards. That tied Jamar Chase for the league lead, and he missed some time. I mean, he is a big time producer down the field. How about Freiermuth? He finished the season with 3 or more receptions in 7 straight games. He had 15 receptions in his final 2 games after not having more than 5 in any previous game this season. He had a team high 5 touchdown receptions with Wilson on the field. Wilson in particular really looked his way in the red zone. And I think Freiermuth's a foundational player. And I think for the most part, it was a successful year, especially down the stretch. But I go back to why not the first 2 months or whatever? Can we keep this going? Can he be a big-time producer week after week? I certainly think he has the abilities and talents to do so. It's another problem with intermediate passing, but not entirely. Some of it's just the nature of the athletes that they have is they generated 1,804 yards after the catch as a team, the whole team. Just 6 offenses have fewer. Now, some of that is a deep ball down the sidelines, you get pushed out of bounds, and it's still a chunk gain, and it's a good gain. But a lot of it is not hitting your guys in stride or middle of the field crossers that, shrug off a tackler or run away from a corner and take it to the house, Niner stuff. All right, targets per route run. These are going to sound like very, very close to one another, but they're not. Think about of all the routes pass catchers run over the course of the year. How often are you targeted? What percentage are you targeted? It wouldn't shock you. Pickens is at 0.23 targets per route run. Najee is at 0.21. Again, those guys don't run as many routes, so remember that. Warren's at 0.20, right behind him. Freiermuth at 0.17. Again, tight ends aren't going to run as many routes as wide receivers either. Austin and Washington were at 0.15. Jefferson and Mike Williams were at 0.10. Now, again, those positions aren't apples to apples, receivers to tight ends, etc. But it shows you when I put this guy out in a route, what kind of priority is it to get him the football? And clearly Pickens was number 1, but the backs were number 2, which I don't have a huge problem with, but it also goes back to the dump-off statistic, the check down. Freiermuth's at 4. You'd probably wish he was higher, but he did come on in the end. This I hate, and we talked about it earlier, so I'll brush over it quick, but Steeler passers were sacked on 8.9% of their dropbacks. That's the 5th highest percentage in the league. And last week I did a deep dive on pass rush on both sides of the ball, and I don't think, for the most part, the Steelers' sack problem on offense is that offensive line related. I think it's much more quarterback, and guys not getting open as quick as they should too, no doubt. We'll touch on these running backs and the running game here, and then wrap this thing up. Jaylen Warren had 64 or more scrimmage yards in 7 of his last 9 regular season games. I think he was back to being himself, and I'm a big fan. I do think injuries early in the season slowed him down. I'm certain of that, to be honest with you. Over his final 9 regular season games, Najee averaged just under 64 total yards per game and hit 100 total yards just once during those times. And in those 9 games, this is a big reason why I think he's gone, and I would have him be on his way. Those final 9 games, he averaged 3.6 yards a carry. Ugh. You can find that anywhere. And I'm not saying he's a dime a dozen guy, but that's bad. Wilson did run for 128 yards and a touchdown in his last 5 games, so he still has that. And it's useful. I mean, I'd like to see what Fields would do as a runner. Average time to scramble. Now, that means you're holding the football, you're not just tucking it and going. Like, for example, Jaden Daniels has a very quick time to scramble, especially early in the season. They told him, if your first read's not there, run. Well, the Steelers, despite having really athletic quarterbacks, if you look at the course of the year, their time to scramble of 4.2 seconds on average is only quicker than the Rams. And we know Stafford's not a scrambler. He's going to sit in the pocket, last resort scramble. Well, it doesn't sound like last resort was for the Steelers to scramble. And I think they should do more of that, don't you think? A couple of more things here. Steelers ran into a stacked box on a little over 25% of their rush attempts. Only 7 offenses did so at a higher rate. It's just bad business. I mean, you would think, and there's some of it was true, especially with Wilson in there, you would check out of those things. But I wonder if it's just, we're going to run the ball no matter what on this play. I don't like the sound of that. Running into stacked boxes is tough. I mean, it's not a fruitful way to live in this league. The Steelers had 28 rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. That was tied for 8th most. So when they get down tight, they're going to pound your face, and I have no problem with that at all. None at all. 3.8 of the Steelers' rushing attempts went for 15 or more yards. Only 5 offenses had a lower rate, and only 19.7 of Pittsburgh's rushing yards came on such runs. Only 4 offenses were lower. And last one I got here is Steelers ball carriers reached speeds of 10 miles per hour or more on 64 occasions. Only 8 offenses produced more. Now, 10's not like flying in terms of miles per hour, but it does mean you've got into the open field and you start to really open your gate. So they also ran the ball a lot. So this was a cumulative stat, but it still shows that they did get some running backs free and did some things, okay in that regard for sure. Last one I'm going to throw out here too. On rushing attempts, the Steelers created 1,181 yards after first contact. Only 5 offenses produced more. Again, that's because you run the ball a ton, but after first contact, the Steelers did get a lot of rushing yardage. So that's noteworthy. Alrighty. That is a wrap for today. I probably will do another offensive deep dive to wrap it up. I got a lot more notes here. I owe you guys a mailbag as well. I'll probably record something over the weekend so you have something Monday as well, but I'll definitely record something tomorrow too, which is Friday. All right, take care.